Hi, 7th grade. Miss Dohan here to talk to you about citations today. We have a couple objectives and I'm going to go over which slides you're going to take notes on this first page. So our goals for today in our learning are to define the important terms for citing evidence, identify the steps in the process to cite evidence both inside our essay and in a works cited page, and to do some practice. So in order to prep for this, you're going to take some notes. You're going to take these notes on the worksheet that you were given in class. You're going to be taking notes on all of the slides except for this one. Pages 2 through 5 are actually guided notes. You're going to fill in the blank. And pages 6 and 7 are actual practice. One we're going to do together and one you're going to do on your own. So make sure you have a writing utensil and that worksheet from class. And let's get started. So the first thing that we need to do, please make sure that your name is on this piece. And we are going to talk about important terms for citing. The very first thing is that a citation is a reference to a source of information. So at any time, if you need to stop and pause this video, do so you can get down the notes. Moving on, so we have that the citation is where we tell all of the information about that source. The purpose of a citation is to give credit to the author for his ideas or her information. So in other words, it's a shout out to the author. Next, the next definition we have is the works cited page. So this is a separate page from your essay, and it lists all the sources of information you included in your essay. And some additional information about that. It goes on a separate sheet of paper. It's found after your essay, and the entries are in alphabetical order. A quick heads up for this essay about tech, I will be providing the works cited page for you. So that's just a quick heads up about that. All right, moving on to more important terms. We also have that a works cited entry is a series of information that gives information about the publishing and how you access the information on each source that you use in your essay. So each source that you used will have its own little blurb about it on the works cited page. Next, we have to differentiate between the two types of evidence that will be found in our essay. We have explicit evidence, which means you took a direct quote that's word for word from another text. So in other words, you're literally lifting or copying and pasting what someone else used. And we have to get important to give credit for that, otherwise we'd be plagiarizing. And then we also have summarized evidence. And summarized evidence means that the information is from another text, but you have done a little bit of work and you paraphrased and explained it in your own words. So right now we're done with the definitions for citations and works cited. Now we're actually going to move into the steps that you use in order to give credit to an author in your writing. So we're going to skip down just a little bit to the steps when citing explicit evidence. So you're going to follow along with me. So the first thing that you always do, and you always do this after you have, after you've written your when you're starting your evidence, is you always start with the quotation marks. This shows, hey, I'm taking this information from somewhere. Next, you need to copy the sentences exactly as it appears in the text. And that means you use the same capitalization or punctuation and even the same spelling. If you're in a novel and someone spells something wrong, you're even going to include that in there. One tip that's important is that you should reread and double check the information to make sure it's 100% accurate. In other words, it's exactly the same. Step 3. When you're done with the information of the quote, you're going to insert again those quotation marks. here's where we need to actually give our shout out to the author. So, adding a little piece. If your quote ends in an exclamation point or a quotation mark, then you do include that punctuation within the quotation marks. So we include only an exclamation point and a question mark before the ending quotation marks. If, however, your quote ends in a period or a comma, then you don't include that punctuation within the quotation marks. And that ending period will just appear at the very, very end. Okay, so now moving on to step 4. After you're done with the information, or like the actual information in the quote, then we add the quotation marks, and we add the first like open parentheses. Here's where, again, we're going to have our shout out to the author. In order to determine what goes in the parentheses, we need to look back at our works cited page, and we need to look back and identify, okay, which source did this like quote or this evidence come from? We are going to include just the first word of the, instead of words cited, it should be works cited entry. And what this will look like, it will either be, or it's usually, the author's last name, or if the author's last name isn't given, the first important word in the title. And this part is important to note because it does impact some of our works cited for this essay. So you're going to include important words. These do not include words like as or for or the. So in other words, the like words that are really meaningful to that title. Okay, so if the novel or information is found in a magazine with given page numbers, then we would include the page number next. However, in our case, we won't because we don't have page numbers. The second to last thing you're going to include is you're going to insert the closing quote, the closing parenthesis, showing I'm almost done, giving a shout out to this author. And the last thing that you're going to do is you're going to add that ending period, showing it's all done. This whole sentence with all of my evidence is done. All right, now go ahead and turn over because we're going to talk about citing not explicit evidence, but summarized evidence. So here are steps to take when we're citing summarized evidence. First step, make sure that you've cited, or excuse me, explain the information in your own words. Next step, we're going to insert the open-ended parentheses. After that, we're going to follow a lot of the steps that we just did. We're going to look back at the works cited page and identify which source did this come from. We're going to include the first word of the works cited entry, either the author's last name or the first important word in the title. Same note. If there are page numbers involved, like if it's a novel or if it's a magazine, we would then include the page number. And to wrap up, we would show, okay, all of the information for the shout out for the author is done, include the closing parentheses, and add the period. So right now, make sure that you have all of the steps for citing summarized and explicit evidence. Now we're going to move on, we're going to do a little practice. And I want you to do this practice with me at the bottom of side 2 on the worksheet. So for this piece, we're going to do practice with the following topic sentence. And the topic sentence says, one piece of technology that has had an impact on society is online ordering systems. So we're going to be talking about online ordering systems, which means we're going to use this first source for our information. And if I go back to the text, I'm going to find my piece of evidence. So the piece of evidence that I want to include is the second sentence. Even though an online ordering system might be expensive to get started, comma, it reduces the number of cashiers a restaurant needs to pay. So I want to include this directly into my paragraph. And I already have my topic sentence, and I have a really great transition that shows I'm about to introduce some evidence. So my first step is I'm going to start with the quotation marks, which I have, and then I'm going to copy this quote exactly as it appears. So I'm going to start with capital E, Even though an online ordering system might be expensive to get, started, and I see a comma, so I'm going to add that. It reduces the number of cashiers. I'm going to spell that correctly. Cash-I-E-R-S. Okay. A restaurant needs to pay. All right. So I've included this quote. I'm going to double check it to make sure it's okay. Even though an online ordering system might be expensive to get started, comma, it reduces the number of cashiers a restaurant needs to pay. Okay, I realize that might have sounded silly, but I'm really making sure I'm being accurate. Step 4, I'm going to insert my ending quotation marks. I'm going to check, and I see that at this point I end with a period, so I don't need to include that period before the ending quotation marks. Step 5, I'm going to add my parentheses. Step 6, or excuse me, I think step 7 now, I'm going to go back to my Works Cited page, and I'm going to find which source this information came from. And since I was talking about apps and online ordering, I know it's going to be the Don't Worry, Be Appy. I'm going to choose the first word in this article, in this Works Cited entry, which is don't. And I'm actually going to include that word don't directly in here. We can see that within this Works Cited entry, there's no page numbers, so I don't need to include page numbers here. I'm just going to end my piece by adding the closing parentheses and then adding my period. So I've worked through my steps to make sure that I've introduced my quote and show that I'm giving outside information by having quotation marks. I've made sure that my quote is very accurate, and I've made sure that I've given a shout out to my author. What I want you to do now to practice is I want you to look at this second topic sentence, second introductory transition, and I want you to look at this piece of evidence. What your goal is, and your goal to practice, I want you to practice practice following our steps to accurately cite this evidence. You're going to do that again directly on the bottom of this worksheet, and we will go over it tomorrow in class. If you have any additional questions, please write them down and bring them to class tomorrow. Have a great day!